Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Raquel from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, I'm joined by a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by editor Marnee Meyer, the editor for Americans, Evil, and the hit show Billions, among many other projects. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I guess my first question is, how did you get involved with the show Billions? Because that's a very popular show at the moment, and I'm sure everyone wants to know what the story is.
How did I get involved? Well, I came on season 1, and I actually had worked with a post-producer on a show on ABC called Manhattan Love Story. And I think, she was already working on the pilot for Billions, so I'm pretty sure she had passed my name along to get an interview. And and then the interview went really well, and I've been on ever since. I actually really enjoy working on shows for multiple seasons because, you just get to know the show, the characters. Every year, you dive deeper in, even just playing with the music. Like every year, the composer creates more stuff for you to work with. Yeah, it's just really fulfilling to work over many seasons. I enjoy that.
Because one of the things that people love about it is that it's this balance of humor, like there's small sort of, I guess, dark humor or dry humor and drama. So how do you find that balance in the editing process?
It's challenging for sure. I actually really love working on both genres, comedy and drama. And so for me, it's great to work on Billions because I get to use both skill sets. You need often things to be, cut more quickly when you want to punctuate the comedy. It allows me to do both, it's a fine balance to create that, something that can toe both lines, the comedy and the drama. So it's challenging, but I enjoy it.
Do you find because one of the things, and I know you worked on stuff like the Jim Gaffigan show and what have you, and it's so much about timing with comedy. So do you ever find that maybe the actor's timing's off and you have to retweak it, or do you find that you have to get in there and mess with the pacing for it to get it to work more? Or?
It really depends, show to show, performer to performer. I don't know. That's each show is cut differently, and each time you're working with actors, it just depends. But yes, often you do have to get in there and carve it out. And often I'm laughing out loud in the dailies, I'm already in it and I know what my take is going to be. And I'll continue to laugh at that moment every time I watch it. Cause it got me the first time, so it'll get me again. But yeah, I feel like I have to take a different approach with each show. And even over time, you see some of the actors develop over time. For instance, Billions, Asia was quite new when they started. And so to see Asia's development over time has been really fulfilling. Asia plays Taylor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talk about getting the stuff in the rushes. When you're looking at the rushes, what do you look for in performances that you sort of use to guide you, or do you go with what the circle takes?
I go with what moves me, and I go with what feels the most natural, what feels I'm getting drawn into the moment, or it just really depends. And while I'm watching the dailies, I'm thinking about when I want to be in a certain composition. When does it feel right to be in a tight shot? When does it feel right to go wide? And I'm just thinking about that as I'm watching the dailies. But I really really want to watch all of it and then start to think about cutting. Like I'm watching it and thinking, but then I also just want to see all of it before I make decisions.
I'm going to ask you a terrible question
Okay.
because it is going to be context based, but like, how do you decide, like what is your, I guess, metrics or what's behind the decision for going in close versus staying in the wide?
I think it really depends. Like it just really show to show, episode to episode, moment to moment. Sometimes you want to show like, something tight because you want to feel the emotion of whatever it is you're getting out of the scene. And sometimes you want to be wide to feel the isolation and the sadness. Like it just really depends. Like I think that's what can be really hard about editing is there's no rules. And so there's infinite choices sometimes. And yet, like when you're watching it, something just feels right. Like I think that comes over time and working on something for a while and like knowing what you think will work. It's a very much
tough,
instinctual. It becomes instinctual.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the problems whenever I'm interviewing editors, they're always like, I don't know. I just, and you're like,
it's true though. It is true. You do feel it. But I mean, when you're watching a film, like it's hard to tell why you feel a certain thing, but you just feel it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of the same. It's hard to pinpoint, but when it feels right, it feels right.
So you're working on Evil, which is a horror show.
Yeah, I worked on season 1 of Evil, and that was really fun. I love horror and very challenging because there's a lot of visual effects. That particular season was a very tight schedule. Mm-hmm. So things were turning around really quickly. But a really fun show. Like I'd never done anything like it. And so it was like super challenging.
Well, when something's VFX heavy like that, how does that impact you as an editor? Because like you're going to be cutting stuff where you're like, well, eventually something will be there.
It's hard. I mean, I would say that I rely heavily on my assistant editors in that moment because, when you're working under those kind of tight schedules, you can only do so much and then you need to pass it on to someone else so that you can keep moving. And so I had this really great assistant, and he loved doing the visual effects. Like when you're working on those kinds of shows, you do want to have people who are strong in that regard and then also enjoy doing it so that when I'm handing the work over, like I know that like it's going to get done and he's going to enjoy doing it or she's going to enjoy doing it. So yeah, Wadia was great. He really, it was one of those shows that like I wouldn't have survived without an assistant that had those kind of skills, that could take on and do like a rough VFX pass so that we could just keep turning, keep on schedule and everything. And also sometimes like for that particular show, like the VFX supervisor was like, on site and we were constantly checking in with him to make sure that like what we were proposing to do was possible, like that kind of thing is like essential, I think, to have like a whole VFX department and that you have good communication. And then you're making sure that like everybody's on the same page because they also had a quick turnaround. So we needed to make sure like whatever we were trying to do was doable in the time frame.
So what do you like? Because like you said, you've jumped from, comedies like the Jim Gaffigan Show to The Americans to Billions and now to Evil. What do you look for in a script? What is it that attracts you to a show?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I always want it should hopefully be a show I would want to watch. So good characters, good story, good people to work with. Like a lot of, these jobs are really challenging and hard. And ultimately, I want to enjoy working with the people that I'm going to be spending so much time with. So that's a huge part for me is, yes, the script, absolutely. But also like, who's my team? Who am I going to be working with? Especially my assistant, somebody who I can, deeply rely upon. And I was lucky enough to have, the ability to progress and go from an assistant to an editor. So like, I really value mentoring the assistants I have. And so, if they want to cut, I want them to be able to cut. I want to, see that development happen. So yeah, it's a lot of things. It is absolutely the script, but it's also a lot of the people that I'm going to be working with.
Well, you've mentioned the assistant a few times and the importance of them. So what do you look for in an assistant when you're bringing someone on?
So I really want someone who is super detail oriented, who is really careful with their work, because, they can often be the final eyes on something. So it's my work, and I want it to be, whoever's seeing it next to be in the condition and that I left it in. So it's like having the trust of someone that, is going to do everything to make sure that your work is presented the way it should be, but also somebody who does like to do visual effects if we need that work done, or, and also it's just fun to work with. Like, I want them to feel like they're growing and getting something out of the experience as well. So yeah, all those things. And I've been really lucky. I've had really great assistants. And some of them are moving up, and it's exciting to see, them get their first, co-edit or edit on a show, and know that, like, I've helped them move in that process.
So who was it who did you have a mentor or someone who sort of guided you at the start? Because you talked about being able your assistant days. Was there a particular person?
Yeah, I have two female editors that were very instrumental in helping me get my first editing job, Debbie Moran and Liz Merrick, and who throughout the last 10 years, like, we often do dinners and lunches, and just like having that support of other female editors who had, been editing before me and would put my name up for stuff. And Debbie was instrumental in helping me get my first co-edits on shows. And I'm so grateful for that. And so I feel really strongly about trying to provide that. And then also, like, I'm a parent, so I feel also very strongly about making sure that, like, women editors or women assistant editors that I work with feel supported as parents, fathers too. Obviously, I haven't worked with that many fathers, but I want to make sure that they feel that sense of, like, it's possible, it's hard, but it's possible. And that, like, there's other women editors out there looking out for them to make sure that, like, that they get the support to be able to do this job as a parent, because it's hard. So yeah, I feel like those women were super helpful to me.
So, you talk about the difficulties of it. How did you guys tackle COVID? Like, when you're cutting during COVID, since having family at home would be a difficult challenge.
Yeah, it's super hard. I wasn't working right away because of the phase I was in on I was working on Billions. I'd only worked for about a week when it shut down, so I wasn't able to continue. But once I started back up, I started on a Starz series called Run the World. And my husband had to stay home. We were all home, but my husband had to take time off work so that I could focus completely and he could focus on the kids. So we had to make some really hard choices. And even with that, it was still so hard because, I'm locked away in an office. We're in a small New York City apartment. And, your kids are here and they expect you to be able to do stuff with them because you're in their space. And some of the content isn't really, like, kid friendly. So you're like putting on headphones. But again, I'll go back to, like, working with good people and always trying to make sure I'm working with people that, I can say to them, like, I need extra time for this because of the situation we're in. Like, I had a great producer who I work with who totally got it. The two showrunners were also parents. They totally got it. I just think that's essential. Like, that if you're in that situation, if you work with people who can understand, like, when you have a sick kid or when you have things going on when school shuts down and you just don't have as much focused time, because a lot of, our job requires a great deal of focus. And when there's all these things happening around you, because kids are home, it's very hard to focus. So I would say it was incredibly hard. And I hope that the schools, don't have to close again. I'm hoping we're on the tail end of this because, yeah.
Fingers crossed for sure.
Yeah.
Is there a particular scene in your career that was difficult to edit, but you're really proud of the results?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. That's such a good question. I mean, I guess, yes. So, I worked on the finale of season 5 for Billions, and it was Damien's last show. And there were a lot of challenges to getting that show put together. And I'm really proud of how it turned out. And I'm glad that I got to cut some of the last scenes he had with like Maggie and everybody, like it was a very emotional thing to work on, knowing that like he wouldn't be on the show anymore, and he was such a great actor to have a privilege to cut. Like, he's phenomenal. So like, yeah, very proud of that show and how it turned out. And despite like a lot of the challenges we were up against with COVID, and yeah, so I wouldn't say a scene, I guess maybe the scene with Maggie, his last scene with Maggie, but just the whole show. I think just putting that whole show together.
Now, when you're starting a project, like when you've gone through the script, you've gone through the rushes, how do you like to approach your edit? Do you tackle it by a script, scene by scene, or do you like to tackle certain scenes first, or
we don't really have a choice in that way, because you get whatever you get from the day before. And for me, it's just staying on top of things and staying up to camera, because often we just don't have that much time. So if I'm getting a day's, the day before's footage, I usually try to tackle the hardest scenes first, just so that I can get through the day. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to do it in the order that I wanted, but it's more just like what comes in for the day. Yeah.
Would you prefer to do it in order if you could, or?
I mean, I guess so, but it's such a ongoing process where you're like constantly, it's like, I think of it like sculpting, like you've got the scene and then you constantly are changing it to make it a little better. You watch it, the day after, and you have a different perspective on it. You watch it in context with the whole show, and then you also have a different perspective on it. So I think because I've only ever had to do it this way, I don't really think about that it would be easier a different way. It's just the way it is that we have to cut out of order.
I have one last question for you that we ask everyone. We've been stuck in the pandemic for 2 years now, and a lot of people get stuck inside, so they turn to the streaming services. Is there a show or a movie that you think people should check out on the streaming services?
Yes, I just watched We Are Lady Parts on Peacock, and it's a series about a group of Muslim girls who form a punk rock band. And it's fantastic. It's really fun. It's only, I think, 6 episodes, which I love when they do like a shorter series. It's really good. So I would say check that out. Maybe get the like free subscription and dive in.
Well, thanks so much for letting me interview you today.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com for all our latest courses. And of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.